What do all of these famous Renaissance paintings have in common? In our past videos, we've talked about the Little Ice Age and how it broke down medieval and then Renaissance society. It drove people to conflict. It made people starve. But that wasn't true everywhere. These paintings are proof of that. Taken together, these paintings are a political statement by a seafaring nation that had, until this point, occupied only a minor place in European society. The newly formed Dutch Republic didn't only survive the Little Ice Age, it forged a golden age. But how? In our last video, we used this chart to describe how climate change breaks down societies. We'll also be using it to break down how the Dutch Republic met the challenges of climate change. We'll start at the bottom, at war. The 16th and 17th centuries were a pretty nutty time in Europe. Protestantism was a bomb that had gone off in every facet of Western society. The Tudors were messing around in Ireland, and then the Holy Roman Empire was wreaking havoc in Germany against France. France was fighting with itself, and 17 provinces in the Netherlands were rebelling against the King of Spain. Several of these provinces ganged up and formed the Dutch Republic. In this way, they were still reacting to the effects of climate change and hadn't yet figured out a way to really work with it. The Dutch Republic was Protestant in a Catholic world. Calvinism, the most popular flavor of Protestantism at the time, valued thriftiness and education, which planted the seeds for the Republic to become a haven of intellectual tolerance. Scientists, architects, artists, skilled craftsmen all came to the Republic as other nations forced them out or couldn't support their line of work because of all the war going on. And how could the Dutch Republic sustain its new population when famine seemed to be everywhere? The Dutch were renowned shipbuilders and engineers. This meant that when food got scarce, they could not only go fishing, they could also sell that fish to their neighbors. And they were very good at selling stuff. In fact, because of their shipbuilding and navigational skill, they became the premier trading power of the Western world. In the latter half of the 17th century, Amsterdam created the world's first central bank and helped fund the first multinational corporation, the Dutch East India Trading Company. So what does this have to do with us today?
The big upshot was that there are societies that seem to do relatively well, although it's kind of a complex picture, but relatively well during periods of past climate change. And the Dutch Republic was one of those societies, I argue in the book at least, and some of my other work, in part because it was not dependent exclusively on sort of the meager surpluses of agricultural production.
This is Dr. Dagomar de Groot. He wrote an entire book about the Dutch Golden Age and the Little Ice Age.
I'm an associate professor of environmental history at Georgetown University in Washington, D.C. I am an environmental historian, which means that I look at the kind of mutual interaction between people and nature.
I asked him what lessons we could learn from the Little Ice Age.
So in the case of the Dutch, I think he learned that societies that were flexible, adaptive, aggressive in response to changing environmental circumstances, that those societies could have significant advantages over other societies that kind of denied that something was happening or didn't respond sort of in a way that was flexible enough, I guess.
And there are even scientists working on policy now that can help us react to future crises better. Every 4 years, 13 American federal agencies put out the National Climate Assessment, hundreds of pages of research collected painstakingly over years, which covers how different U.S. regions are struggling with climate change, but also how they're adapting. You can read more of this research in the Google Doc in the description of this video. Up until now, society has been reactive to climate change. We send our best people to disasters, we recycle, we sign agreements and create policy to limit the damage. We are not embracing the new normal. Human-driven climate change is permanent, non-reversible. The Dutch created a society that was wildly exploitative and wasn't by any means a utopia in freezing Europe. But it was also a society that embraced change and new ideas.
So the value of these stories, I think, is not necessarily in prescribing set policies, but in giving us sort of stories about the past that I hope will kind of resonate more with people than sort of the usual dry, frankly, scientific literature, right? But also vividly tell us that, the stuff has happened before, and the world of the future is not just sort of hypothetical. This is sort of a reality that we've been coping with on a smaller scale for a long time. And so it's important for us to act as quickly as possible.